That's right, everybody. We're back. They said it would never last, and we're on episode 40-something. 46 we are, which is it's Andy's age, so we're celebrating a unique episode today. And we want to say hello from the World Vox headquarters in Brea, California to the interwebs. Hello, everybody. Hello, Internet, as we say around here. A couple of things really quickly. Reminder, we've got 2 podcasts. We've got the Vox Community Podcast. We've got this one, which you are aware of. Secondly, Andy is wearing what he told me is early fall attire. So last week, it was a tank top. This week, after Labor Day, I guess there's a rule that no tank top. So let me describe it, just for those of you at home, to kind of get an image of what Andy Bear is. He's calling it his early fall. He said it with a straight face. It's kind of early fall. I said, hey, it's nice that you have your fall wardrobe. He's like, no, it's early fall. So let me describe it. So it's greenish kind of patterned shorts. And then the shirt isn't short sleeve.
It's a 3/4.
It's not.
Tee.
No, it's capri.
Okay.
It's a capri shirt because it's not all the way down. It's not up top. It's like 3/4. So it's a capri shirt, which I love. And then you came in with a fedora, which makes me so happy. Andy's growing his hair out, which makes me jealous. And there we have the Andy fashion update today. I'm wearing.
Oh, it's my buddy's screen printing company.
Yeah.
Freedom of Press.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Shout out to Carter.
No one cares.
He makes our shirts at Vox.
No one. Well, okay. Carter, give us a great deal. We love you. All right. I'm wearing Jim Schwartz and a t-shirt. And we're joined today by the regal presence of class, dignity, and the room smells better. Our friend Bonnie. Bonnie's back. Yay,
Hello,
Bonnie.
friends.
Bonnie, talk closer.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yes, there
Hello,
you go.
friends.
So Bonnie, our friend Bonnie and I go back years and years and years. So I knew her from a church 11 years ago. She submitted a teaching sample when we were requesting teaching samples and just killed it. And so Bonnie and I have been friends, united by our love for teaching. I've worked for her. She's worked for me. She's got her own podcast, Find the Baby Blue.
Nope.
Find the Sky. Blue is the sky.
So close.
Find the blue.
Ding, ding, ding.
And blue
Got
here
it.
is spelled like it is in French, right? It's BLEAU, correct?
Nope.
Find the
That's not
bleu.
even right.
It's
Find the
just
blue.
blue.
It'd be BLEU.
Bleu. Bleu.
Bleh.
All right, so Find the Blue is Bonnie's podcast.
Yep.
Bonnie, you also have a website, correct?
Yes, findtheblue.com.
Interestingly enough.
I know.
Right?
So that's easy to find.
Yes,
And-
especially if you're blue.
Yes, you can find it.
So we're here. So Bonnie, so dumb, I know. So Bonnie's here to bring some class, some dignity, and she is one of our resident theologians here at Vox. She's one of our teachers at our church, and so Bonnie and I we've been waiting to continue a conversation we started, I think, in February of 2016 about the role of women in church. Now, I know we have loads of listeners who are not parts of churches or not church fans, or they're still figuring out the whole Jesus thing. But it will come as no surprise, or maybe it will be a surprise, that one of the things Christians disagree over is what roles can women have in the church community. And there are 2 main camps, and lots of variation within those camps. One camp is typically called the complementarian camp, and it says that men and women have unique and God-designed differences. Those differences are complementary and function best in the ordering in which they're received in the Bible, which is kind of the man is the head of the woman, the man is the head of the household, the woman. And even in church, that headship is expressed in a church community through male elders, male pastors, sometimes even male teachers, so on, so on, so on. And there are, variations, degrees of variation in that view. And then there's the egalitarian view, which is that the roles are open. Every role in the church is open to male or female. And there are differences that are God ordained and to be celebrated, but those differences don't work themselves out in restricting women from certain roles and not. So And there's a huge debate over this. When we recorded in February, we spent a little time. So we spent some time hearing about Bonnie's journey as someone who is gifted in teaching and a woman. Is that still true?
Still true. Both.
Okay.
Both
of those are still true.
Yep.
Just checking. And how hard it was even to go to seminary.
Yeah.
And how people were kind of looking at you, and how we spent a little time talking about my journey as a white male, in the recognition that the scripture's view on this isn't, I think, on the complementarian side, it's on the egalitarian side, and so we talked a little bit about that. But one of the interesting things that came out of that podcast was Bonnie fielding questions from women who were like...
And men, actually.
And men.
Yeah. First one that we're going to go through is a man.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So for fielding questions from women and men, and about how this works itself out. So we're not going to spend as much time. There is a podcast coming that's like the systematic, like, doesn't it say women are to be silent, and doesn't it say women can't teach?
Where's their head covering?
Yeah, where's their head covering? Which in Bonnie's case, she's got so much head covering that's, I mean, the hair is so thick, and Andy has a lot of hair covering. I'm glad the scripture doesn't command me to have my head covered, because I'd have to get something for that to happen.
Tattoo would work.
Yeah, sure,
See a nice little
sure,
skull cap tattoo.
Of course. I'm waiting just to transplant my arm hair up there. I think it'll be really great. It'll be curly.
You got enough.
It'll be curly. I got lots. So all of a sudden I'll be a blonde curly guy.
I have to do the opposite. I have to actually
Yes,
transplant
you have
my
nothing.
regular hair
Yes.
to my arms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's an issue between you and Mercedes, so we're not going to discuss that now. But anyway, so we're back to Bonnie. So what we thought we would do is she's got some really interesting questions that she's received that we wanted to address, and get her feedback on, and I think they'll be great fodder for our discussion. So Bonnie, go ahead.
All right.
Take it away.
Okay, first one. This question's long, so we're going to go through it in parts.
Yes.
And this one was from a male. Okay, it says, I'd love to get your opinion on something. I went to a church here in Orange County on Father's Day because my close friend was leading worship. I normally go to a home church.
Okay.
The message really annoyed me. The
Wow.
speaker, I know, has a good heart, but
I'm trying
said,
to think of where I was preaching on Father's Day, if I was anywhere. Is this about me secretly? I want to know.
well, we'll see.
Okay. This sounds like emails I get all the time.
So far, it could be you. The speaker has a good heart, but said some very misleading things. He used statistics that basically show how important it is for fathers to go to church.
Yep.
The statistics indicated that the most important factor in children children sticking with the church as they age was whether or not the father attended.
Yes, that's actually a true study.
That's probably very true.
I've actually read that study myself.
The mother attending,
Yep.
according to the study, was much less impactful for sustained attendance by the children.
Yes, that is what the study said.
Sounds skewed, but we'll get to that.
Yep.
He really didn't interpret the data, and instead let the data imply that men are just that much more important than women.
That's true.
He
All of
also
that is
made
true.
other comments about men having the power and that it is probably the way it should be.
That's always good.
I couldn't tell if he was
That's always
joking,
good.
but either way, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second, Bonnie, because there's this interesting thing that, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. So I wrote a book years ago called Why Guys Need God, which
I didn't read that one.
I thought, it was awful.
I'm sure it wasn't awful.
No,
I just
baby,
didn't read
the
it.
title was horrific. I mean, none of my books have good titles except for Astonished and Jesus of Suburbia. I didn't get to pick the three middle ones, but anyway, and in that I actually quoted that study.
Okay.
And the reason I wrote that book was because there at the time a book had come out called Wild at Heart.
Yes.
That had struck a massive chord in the
People
Christian
loved it.
community.
Yeah.
Yes, about what it meant to be, to recapture masculinity.
Yeah.
And then in part of the wake of that book coming out, there was this discussion that was being called the feminization of the church. that the church had been feminized in some of its forms, and that the reason men were not participating to the degree that women were participating is because of this feminization. We feminized Jesus. We feminized...
Not at a leadership level, just at like a...
The leadership was all male.
Right. Okay.
In irony of ironies.
Yeah.
But the followerships, quote unquote, was predominantly female. So I've got books on my shelf about why men don't go to church and what do we do about that. And so that study was interesting because the study was claiming that and it was only measuring church attendance. It wasn't measuring spirituality.
Okay.
It was only measuring church attendance. Which factor in broken homes or intact homes seemed the most statistically significant, and it was the spiritual involvement of the dad. Okay. So
on children in general, or
on
male
children? On children in general.
Okay.
And so, this statistic was part of that. Christianity's been feminized, and we need to kind of reclaim the masculine expressions of it. So I'm hearing in this two things that I'm interested. First of all, can that statistic be true and not have women? Can it be true and not be at the expense of women? Is the first question. Or if it's true, does that come at the expense of women? In other words, is there only so much honor and respect to go around, and the elevation of one necessarily has to come at the expense of the other? So when you hear this, what rings in your brain?
Well, I think, honestly, to be frank, it's kind of a lousy study to just talk about church attendance.
Right.
Anybody can drag their kids to church.
Right.
Especially if you're in a household and the dad's like, get in the car, go to church.
Right.
It feels like, well, okay, so we don't really know how much that's happening.
Right.
So a spirituality study would have been a lot better. The second thing I think that is hard is that there's really no point in just saying it's the male. Why couldn't we do a study with male and female? Even if you did that study and the results came out the same, at least you gave the female role a voice in that.
Right.
Which doesn't seem to have happened. I didn't read the study.
Yeah. I think it was. I think there was. But again, I mean, this is years ago, so I could be misspeaking.
But I'm not one to think that just because you say, hey, men have this impact on their children, I don't necessarily think it means that women don't.
Right.
I think it's fair to say men have different impact than women do.
Yep.
And I think that's fine. The problem arises is if someone is portraying the information saying, see, only men can have this influence.
Right.
Because I don't think that's true.
Right.
So, like, for example, in our household, my husband leads worship.
Right.
And my son's seen him lead worship, but my son's also seen me teach.
Right.
And sometimes he'll say, why don't we go to such and such church? And I'll say, oh, this is where the Lord has us now. And then if we do attend a different church to visit a friend or something, he'll say, why aren't there any women up there? Mommy, where's all the mommies? Why aren't they on stage? And so I think
interesting.
There is a perspective of kids also model things.
Sure.
And so if you're going to a church where it's all men on stage and it's all men doing these things, and you also have someone who's a male, a dad or a dad figure in your life saying, you need to go to church and do these things, and the only thing you're looking up to is leadership, then when your mom comes in and says, hey, you should go to church, I think the subconscious thought is like, well, why? Like, why should I? What's it for you? Or like, what does that mean to you? You don't go, I don't see women doing things in the church like I see men doing things in the church. And so I think it just has a different perspective on that. But if you bring your kids up, your children up in a household or under perspective that men and women can do both, I think it changes things.
So when you hear people say the church has been feminized, what do you think about that?
I wouldn't use feminized. I think the church, I think the church.
That's their language.
Right. I think the church and theology in general has been washed down. So if by feminized they think washed down, then I don't agree with that.
What do you mean by washed down?
I think the church model right now that we have, not Vox and not some other churches I know.
Boy, thank you.
What is that though? Briefly, what is the church model?
There's one lead male pastor, and he gives a quick feel good about this in your life, and then you leave.
Right.
And it's a show and it's a production, and we go there to get fed. I think that church model is broken.
Right.
And I think what comes out of that is we want more attendance, we want more people, we want more money. And so therefore the message is heavily skewed to just favor people and to not bring the actual hard truth of the gospel sometimes. So when that happens, I think comes out of that programs that can be like more geared towards women, because probably women either have more time depending on their situation at home, or
the highest attenders too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that's who's in the room.
Exactly. And so in that sense, I can see being like, oh, it's feminized and that it's geared towards women. But I think those are two separate issues. I think that one has fed into the other, unfortunately. And so it's created this culture where this like washed down message is then associated with feminism. And so then, oops, men can't go because the women are taking over. But I think those are two separate issues.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. One of the examples used in that kind of train of thought is the idea of worship. You know, that our worship songs sound very much like love songs. And the posture of, you know, the enraptured worshiper with hands held high and, you know,
well, it's like churches
eyes
learned,
closed.
Well, and even I feel like even churches learned from the late 70s and the early 80s of power ballads. Because like power ballads attracted women, which then attracted guys, and they became anthematic. And it's like that whole emotional feel of the anthem is so emotionally drawing, and a lot of like the lyrical language becomes exactly what you just said.
Right,
it's fascinating.
So I kind of, you know, as a dude, I saw bits and pieces of truth in all that I was reading. You know, I mean. I also think the church has been masculinized, obviously in some ways, and that's never really considered in that whole branch. But it was interesting, Bonnie, because the disconnect between the leadership being predominantly male and the non-leadership being predominantly female. Yeah. And what the heck was that about? And I always thought, okay, well, no one's addressing that. Right, that's interesting, and the if they did address it, the argument was, well, it's the men teaching very feminized forms of worship, and so we need to recapture. You know, we're in a battle. Right. This was the John Eldridge thing. We're in a battle. Yeah. We need to win a beauty, and we need to go make a difference, or you know, have a battle to win, or whatever.
Well, I feel like Reformed theology teachers are starting. It's like that's where like I see so many more guys grabbing onto that theology and like that movement, like Driscoll, like all of his media, all of his marketing at Mars Hill. I mean, his men like population at his church was like percentage skyrocketed. You know, and so that's interesting to me too. Like, why that worked.
Well, and then I think your guy questioner gets into some other stuff that is going to lead to this.
He said, I had been frustrated when I was attending this church because they have 0 women teachers for Sunday services. I encouraged a female Bible study teacher, saying that her gift would be powerful on Sunday mornings. She teared up because that's the dream of hers, but she said, I don't think we're there yet.
Yep.
Feeling annoyed, I wrote this later that day. Father's Day messages need to start addressing how embarrassingly bad the state of men in America has become. Men cause a vast majority of the problems that society faces, take hardly any of the responsibility, and still act as if they're God's gift to leadership. I love that this is from a man.
Yeah, seriously.
If men do not start championing women within the church, how could we possibly expect to see improvement in equality for women in the workplace or in government?
Well, the workplace and government are leading the church. I mean, that's the irony is, you know, that no one's going to have an issue with a female CEO or...
I disagree.
Oh, you think people still do?
I think people in the church still do.
Really?
Only because I've been told that.
That women shouldn't be CEOs and...
No, they shouldn't have any leadership role at all.
Oh.
Above.
So not just in the church, but everywhere.
Yeah, I think the general population, you're correct. Yeah. But I think those, especially, and only camps I've heard this from, so this is a stereotype right now, but from the Reform camp is that.
Right.
Of... Well, you can't be a leader in the church or in
which is so funny because what do they do with all the women leaders in the Bible? I mean, what do you do with them? What do you do with the judges and the prophetesses and the deacons, and what do you do with the teachers and I mean the apostles? What do you do with all? That just strikes me as crazy.
And the argument I've heard was, well, you'll notice that like when those women are in leadership. It's not funny, but this person was serious. When those women are in leadership, everything was in chaos, which is like so hilarious.
Right.
But
they were there; they just weren't any good.
Right.
Or like, so for example, and I know you're like, I'm never talking about Trump again, but I know a few people that are like, I don't like Trump, but I can't support a woman as president. So therefore I can't, whatever. And I recall when I think it was Palin was she going to be vice president?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Piper was like, I want to vote for so-and-so, but I can't vote for a woman vice president. So I'm not going to do it. So I think there is an issue.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know that just, okay.
And
so,
just in terms of equality, I know a lot of women who are heads of stuff, who are heads of departments or CEOs or leadership, and their salary is completely significantly smaller.
It's a different pay scale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I have no doubt. I am shocked. Well, I mean, I'm glad at least they're consistent. I mean, if they're going to say, well, women can't lead in the church,
right?
Then at least you're saying, well, they can't lead anywhere.
They can't lead anywhere. Yeah.
So, okay, points for consistency.
Yeah. No surprises.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this person's annoyed that because men cause the vast majority of problems in society.
Yeah, I want to hear what you guys say about that. Men cause a vast majority of problems that society faces, take hardly any of their responsibility, and still act as if they're God's gift to leadership.
Well, here's what's funny. So for the guys who are in the Christianity's been feminized movement, they'll read that and go, absolutely. So we have to reach the men. That was Driscoll's battle cry.
Right. Yeah. This is why they need to be here.
This is why they need to be here. This is why we have to bend everything towards young men because they don't have father figures. They don't know how to be men. All they're growing up with are these extended adolescent images that are porn drenched, video game focused, irresponsible. If the woman you're with doesn't want to have sex with you, you hook up with somebody else. If she gets pregnant, you drive her to the clinic. I mean, it's all taken care of. There's no responsibility. There's no duty. There's no honor. So the people in that camp would jump on this and say, exactly, Bonnie, you have made our point for us.
Right.
So, but the interesting jab at the end from this person, I don't mean jab in a pejorative sense, but it's and they still think we're God's gift to leadership.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing. So I do think, for me, the way I work this out is there have to be both masculine and feminine expressions of Jesus following. There have to be, and there were all throughout the scriptures. The thing that was so interesting about Jesus is that Jesus allowed women into spaces that were normally and exclusively occupied by men.
Right.
In terms of being his students, being his disciples. And Paul seems to list women all over the place as his co-workers in the gospel without any designation of their apostles, their prophets, their deacons, and so for me, I go, okay, if according to Genesis 1 and 2, male and female reflect the image of God. Male individually, yes. Female individually, yes. But male and female together most powerfully. Well, then there should be masculine expressions. Now, and I mean masculine, not in the Hollywood macho, like sergeant at arms kind of expression.
Right.
And I don't mean feminine like the rom-com. I don't mean the stereotype that, other than there seems to be a wide breadth of permission to both. But we're in this binary thing where elevating women can only come at the expense of men.
Right.
And elevating men can only come at the expense of women. And that's where I'm going. That's where the speaker was unfortunate in the way the statistic was presented.
Exactly.
Because the way it does sound like it's a fixed pool of power.
Right.
And men and women can only operate, and obviously, I mean, that's totally a consequence of the fall, that it's a power struggle. And the problem is, some in the Christian church have baptized what the fall is, namely this power struggle, instead of calling us forward into new creation, which reflects Genesis 1 and 2, and the equal sharing of power in advance of the mission, right? So for me, I have no problem saying, well, of course, yes, men are a mess. As one, I contribute, but also realizing the fracturing of the family, that family unit has been devastating in our culture.
Yeah. Most
particularly around the idea of what masculinity is. And so you either have in the church, you have hyper masculinity, right? The macho, angry, awful, wives submit thing. Or you have a very passive form of masculinity, which is, hey, we're Christians, we're nice, we never have to fight anything, there's no place for anger. And we've lost kind of Jesus in the middle, this gentle, this gentle anger, this meek anger that wasn't weakness, and it was very furious. We've talked about it a bit, but all that is to say, I hear that and I go, okay, that's true. That's true. The fact that we've not allowed women at the table of leadership has equally devastating consequences to the fact that men are struggling.
Yeah.
But they're two sides of the same coin to me.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I think you see, just like what you said, I think anytime you have any sort of structure, whether it be a company, a church, even just like a society structure, and I talked about this when I preached at Vox, but anytime you see something where you're used to a group of people sort of being on top of the status quo, and someone's trying to equalize it, I think that's threatening.
It's always going to feel.
Yeah, it feels like oppression.
Always going to feel like that.
Right.
And it's always going to feel. So it doesn't matter what it is. We see this in racism. We see this all the time. And but I think does everybody a disservice to say, like, just because I'm for this means I'm anti this.
Yes.
No matter what we're talking about.
We're trapped in the binary dualism of Greek thought as opposed to the Hebrew ability to carry all sorts of things in tension with each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for us, for the ancients, honor and shame was a fixed commodity. So I only receive honor at the expense of shaming you.
Right.
And we do that now with politics. We do it with religion. We do it with race. We do it with gender. There's no way to elevate women without de-elevating men. And what you're saying is, if you're used to privilege, and I think this is so true, if you're used to privilege, the equalization of another feels like marginalization to you. When you go, oh, okay, I can say Black Lives Matter without having to jump in and say every other life matters too. It's not coming at the expense.
It's it's like after the Dallas shootings, when you felt, and someone expressed like Black Lives Matter, and someone else said, well, why do you hate police?
Right.
Like, I don't. I'm allowed to care for both. Right. I'm allowed to sit here in this tension.
That's right. That's right. But there's one that's particularly...
There's always a front runner.
There's one that's particularly... I can oppose Trump and not be a fan of Hillary. Right. I can oppose Hillary and not be a fan of Trump. I mean, it's possible. So when it comes to these gendered sort of discussions in the church, one of the things that I pick up on this email, but even it's just deeper in this way of thinking, is there are only two options.
Yeah. It's black,
right?
Yeah.
So keep going. So keep going.
Okay. So he said, when we suppress the natural gifts of women, we all lose.
True.
What do you think should be done about this? It feels as though anyone who cares is just saying, yeah, it's horrible, but what can be done? It seems like there needs to be a voice speaking out against it. The problem is more simply than holding down women. We are preventing everyone from benefiting from these gifts women possess. The church needs it badly, in my opinion.
I think we would absolutely agree.
Yeah, I would say when he's talking about someone speaking out, I think you, and I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting here at the Vox headquarters.
The World Vox headquarters.
The World Vox headquarters. I think you've done a really good job of using, I think the first step is being aware of your place.
Woke.
Yeah.
Have you heard that word?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway.
Sounds like
woke.
You two made that up.
Yeah.
Being aware of your place. You're a white male in a church. So what sort of
That's what I'm talking
status, privilege, whatever does that give you?
Andy's not technically white. He's Filipino.
Right.
So
Hipster,
even though I'm the same
male in the church.
My white side and my Filipino side, they share.
They love each
But
other.
my Filipino side says I'm a little louder.
My
I'm just
Swiss,
a tad louder.
Just a tad louder.
my Swiss side and my Austrian side go to war sometimes. Too.
Yeah.
I'm very,
right. Surprisingly, because I'm
biracial.
surprised Swiss just stay out of it.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay. I'm sorry, Bonnie. Go ahead. You were
Andy's
complimenting.
hilarious.
Don't encourage him. Don't encourage him.
I think you're
his
hilarious.
His mom keeps leaving reviews
Oh, she left a good one this
for
week
more
too.
Andy. Did she?
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't see it.
My mom
Oh,
leaves
Lord.
reviews too, but under different names.
Oh, that's what Andy's mom
And
does.
it's so amazing.
I love it.
Anyways,
Go, Mom. Go, Mom.
I don't remember what I was saying. Oh,
First step is awareness.
Yeah, awareness. And then going, how do I contribute or not contribute?
Sure.
And what can I do about that? So it's the same thing when I talk about this a lot with poverty. if somebody who's living on like $1 a day in extreme poverty says we need help, that voice is not going to be as loud as me,
right?
In like the one in the position and place I'm in, saying, "Hey, we need to help them."
Right.
And so I think like you've done a really good job of going, not only I believe this to be true, but here's how I'm going to show you that I believe this to be true. And so I don't always necessarily, I think sometimes it does take someone actually speaking out verbally and saying, women should be elevated, women should whatever. But I think your biggest hope for change is leading by example.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
Good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, you really do have two choices. Is this a deal breaker for you in participating in the community?
Yeah.
Or is it not? And are you willing to give grace? Because what we don't need are more angry people sitting and stewing in churches and, being hurt. And so if it's a deal breaker, then find a church that affirms women. I mean,
well, and I think you can have both. I think you can give grace and say, this is great about you, but for me, this doesn't represent Jesus in the way I think Scripture does.
That's right.
I've done that. And we came to a point in our marriage where we just said we just can't attend a church anymore that doesn't value women and not value me, value just women.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that. And so, but that stems from what's tough is when people hear that and they think oh, that's just because you're a woman and you teach and blah, blah, blah. And going, no, that actually stems from, I actually believe biblically this is true. And this is what makes Jesus alive and aware to people around us. It's not, just because I have a chip on my shoulder. But if my husband says it,
sometimes you have a chip on your shoulder when you're carrying your son.
Because that's my kid's name.
Correct.
But if my husband says it, no one questions it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
No, everyone's like, oh,
it's
how
called
great.
mansplaining.
Yeah, I guess. Well, it's ridiculous. But,
okay.
That's what I think. But so leading by example. But I think it first starts that you have to be aware. I don't know. Do you feel like, maybe you can answer this. Do you feel like in the church scene at large in general, right, has it been hard to be at a church that didn't value women and then to go to Vox that does? And what do people say, and do you care?
I've always been in a leadership role. So part of I've always wanted to push whatever boundary there was. So a church called Rock Harbor, we held a view that women could exercise any gift as long as it was under the headship of a male elder board. Mm-hmm. Mariners is very similar to that. Mariners is pastors, teachers. I mean, they just have male elders, but they serve, both Rock Harbor and Mariners served in partnership with their wives. The elders did. So you were pushing the boundaries even there.
Yeah, you couldn't be a single female serving on the elder board.
Correct.
Right.
But they also, you could be a single male, but the thought was always you wanted a married male. So
that's preferred.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Not a requirement, but more out of wisdom.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so for me, I didn't see, I thought, hey, we're kind of on the cutting edge of this. And then I've been a part of other communities where women really didn't even have that.
Right.
And saw the toll that began to take. And so to be at Vox, I mean, when you taught, you said 2 couples walked out, the minute you got up there. And to which I say, fantastic. We would have disappointed them somewhere else. We talked even last night. We had a new to Vox dinner. We had 50 people in our living room. And that's one of the things we say. We're here's our point. Here's our view on all of these big issues.
Right.
And we're not going to change it. And this is what we're going to do. And when I'm not here, our guest teachers are going to be predominantly women because they don't get opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so people will say, hey, there aren't any good women teachers. And I want to say, well, that's because no one ever lets them teach.
No one ever does it. Yeah.
And so for me, at this point, I'm biblically absolutely convinced that I was mistaken. And it's not because culture is going there, although culture going there forced me to re-examine. Mm-hmm. It's like culture now affirming gay marriage. how have we that force to look at, okay, how have we treated the LGBTQ community? And you realize, oh my goodness, even with good intentions, there was the massive gaps. And so, so I think as an act of repentance, one of the ways that what we want for Vox is to be the place where, like, our worship leader is a 20-year-old young lady named Izzy, and she's awesome. she's just awesome, and I love that she's 20 and she sits around our leadership table. She's not there to lead worship; she's there to help lead the community, and I just love that. And so for me, it brings me energy. I love it. I love seeing you and others be freed up in their giftedness. I love being a counter voice to some of the narratives that are just kind of entrenched there. And yeah, we get criticism for lots of it.
Right.
Of course. Absolutely.
And I think the point I'm trying to make is when it's no, you're exactly right. But I mean, of course you're going to get criticism, but there's such a big difference of what criticism feels like when you're doing something because it's your biblical conviction versus you're doing something because you feel like, well, I guess this is the safe route, or this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. And that to me is where, when I get into conversations with folks who disagree with me on this issue, my first step is always to get them to admit this is a biblical discussion. Right. This is a discussion about the text. This isn't a feminist agenda.
Yeah.
This isn't some liberalization of the church. This isn't the feminizing of the church. This is a conversation about 3 texts and the overarching narrative of the Bible. That's what this is a discussion about. And and that's what our gay affirming friends will say, too. This is a discussion about texts. This isn't a discussion about. Now, we all bring an agenda. We all are importing, so none of us are neutral. I get that, and I think as long as we're honest about what we're bringing to the text, that's totally fine. I mean, there's no way to escape it.
Right.
So when I have that conversation, I just want to start by saying this is 2 views of the Bible that we're talking about. This is an inter-family discussion. And then the second thing is I just want them to open up to the possibility that the received tradition isn't the received tradition.
Right.
That there are not only counterexamples, but the vision of humanity given in Genesis 1 and 2 that Jesus seems to point back towards was fully egalitarian in nature.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think speaking out, like he said, just what you said, having honest conversations is huge. I think something I can do better at is I don't even have the conversation anymore.
Why?
I just kind of assume this is, again.
Well, you've been hurt.
Yeah.
You've been hurt bad.
But mostly people don't want a conversation. They want an argument. Okay. And I'm just not up for it.
Well, Facebook's for that. Right. We don't have to meet in person anymore.
No, now we can just yell at each other.
Facebook is the best place to put your differences on.
Yes.
I'm just not up for it. And so I should be more, but it's helpful to have other men to be like, oh, have you listened to Mike's thing on this? And I should do better, but I'm just over fighting about it.
Sure.
There's just other things that are more important to me.
Well, yeah, it's a settled issue for you, and it's an issue that's caused some pain and disappointment, and I can see why you don't want to. But for me, as I try to grow into what Jesus might be like, I keep being confronted with I'm the biggest sinner in the room always, and that I have to, because I received so much grace for wherever I was in the journey, I have to give grace to where people are too. And I know that's cliche and trite, but it's deeply transformative for me, because the people I love to judge most are the judgers. The people I feel self-righteous about most are the self-righteous, right? At least I'm not like them. And so as Vox has kind of taken shape, I've seen in my heart this temptation to keep defining things against something else as opposed to for something that's big and beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that's the danger in the discussions, right? I start to get frustrated with people that don't see things the way that I see them.
Yeah.
And I remember guys 20 years ago, and they listen to this podcast and they throw it in my face, that were like, hey man, women should be fully utilized. And I'm going, I don't think so. There's this verse in 1 Timothy, and
totally.
and so those people. I remember a guy
now they're like, oh, look at you.
Oh yeah. I literally had a guy Facebook me and just say, yeah, I wish you would have listened to me 20 years ago.
Yeah,
would
have saved you.
Yeah. So there is that part of your healing will be the ability to bless people who are still kind of in process.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a tough thing, man. It's such a tough thing.
Yeah.
Something that he kind of said at the end of that email, and it's a question I want to ask you guys. Like, because of how the circumstance plays out, is it the male responsibility in order to change this? Because to your point, like him saying there needs to be voices that are doing this, to like what you said, authoritative voices that have a platform tend to be the ones to be able to change it. Mm-hmm. Not just like, because it's hard to say, oh, this is a women's issue, right? Like, well, all the women need to band together and like go after like it's this women's rights thing, right? And they need to become authoritative in their voice in order to have the influence.
Right.
Whereas, is it a male dominance thing generally in the culture that's allowing it to keep moving on, and it would require other male authoritative voices in order to change it? I mean, would we agree on that, or?
I as a white guy, I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
It seems on the face of it, it seems like that's true. That if a culturally marginalized voice is never going to speak as powerfully to a cultural majority as a cultural majority voice would speak to a cultural majority.
Yeah.
It seems that that's true, but I don't know. I mean, you look at some of the you look at Martin Luther King, and you look at some of the very early feminist movements, the suffrage movement, and mm-hmm. so on. Well, those were led by counter voices mm-hmm. from marginalized communities. So I don't know. To me, I've just been thrilled that Jesus is gentle with me, because I think at any moment I'm worthy of being smacked upside the head with all the ways I get it wrong, mm-hmm. and to allow me to kind of grow a bit into this in exactly the pattern you describe.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing that's still so interesting is, for me, I think part of the lead by example is when people hear you teach. Mm-hmm. See, I don't want this conversation to be about my journey. To me, the more interesting question is yours, mm-hmm. because when people, I mean, you even shared a story in our first podcast about somebody who heard you teach and went, well, clearly you're gifted to do this. So
I got to go back and reevaluate.
And reevaluate. And now, and people do that around all kinds of issues, right? So many people that now say, well, now that I have a gay family member or a gay friend, I got to go figure this out differently now.
Yeah.
It's so,
or at least give it another look.
If the reason that you held a certain theology was you never met anybody differently, then yes, that theology should be checked.
No matter what it is.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because one of the knocks I always hear is, man, if you affirm women, then it's a short step to then affirming gay people.
I cannot tell you the amount of times I've heard, well, if you go to a church that it's a slippery slope.
Right.
And I'm like, into what?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that is a big one. All right, we got another question.
Wait, can I
Yes.
answer,
Oh, yeah,
Andy?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I would say from my perspective, I would completely agree with you.
Okay.
Anytime I have been a part, well, I think there are some women, teachers and theologians, that are just doing it. They're just like, I'm just going to speak. I'm just going to do this thing. And they don't necessarily have a voice speaking for them. They're just doing it.
Right.
But two things happen. One, it can be successful, and that can happen. But the problem sometimes that happens there is then the majority of their followers, regardless of the topics, are only women. Mm-hmm. And that's a bummer.
Yeah.
I wish it was more, it was both male and female, because they're preaching the Bible.
Right.
They're not just like
talking. I dropped my phone.
They're not talking about just things that only women can relate to.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a problem.
Yeah.
The other thing that you do see is, and I've had this before, is just like you said, is you're labeled as sort of having an agenda. Like, you just want this because of what's in it for yourself. And so to your point, you saying, as a white male, I really can't answer that. Actually, I think as a white male, that's the reason why you can answer that. Is because, especially in Orange County, and especially in the American church, I do, in evangelical circles as well, is like, you are the predominant voice. And I think that it is going to take voices in male voices in leadership to change it. That's what I think. And that's been my journey. I literally, nobody, I had a lot of people say, you're gifted, you're gifted, you're gifted, until you've really been the only person so thus far has said you're gifted, and so therefore here's a space for you to use your gifts. Nobody was willing to act on that. Once I was on the podcast and preached at Vox, people are like, oh, okay. And I have a bunch of speaking engagements this fall. But that's only because you said, hey, like, here's a woman, but she's gifted, but like this should be it should be a combination of voices.
Which is so weird, because I mean, they would expect like, oh, so do you want to do a women's conference? Oh, I teach at these women's study things, and it's not like they're bringing you in because of how well you do at those. It's because your voice is just completely neutralized among both men and women.
Yeah, exactly, because someone gave a platform and a space for that and said, oh, wait a minute, anyone can hear the Bible being taught, not just women can hear from women.
Shocking.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It takes Filipinos to reach Filipinos. It takes hipsters to reach hipsters. A frat boy, which is what Andy calls me.
Frat pastor.
Frat pastor, which is hurtful.
A frat boy.
I know. It's so true.
You should see Mike's keg wall we've built inside of his office. It's a secret doorway to
Yes.
Yeah, all these
Yes,
books.
it's to my man cave.
into a man cave.
Yes. I have all the Sports Illustrated cover models on there.
Yep.
And
in addition to all
a
these
pool
male
table.
celebrity pastor posters.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh my gosh, don't.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Don't.
Someday I can be a male celebrity pastor.
Oh my gosh.
I'm really hoping. There are courses now. All right, go Bonnie.
I saw that thing. Okay, here's the second question. I am the daughter of two veterans. I have watched my mother struggle to be a godly woman while also working in a male-dominated and more secular place in the Army. Now I am following in their footsteps, and your podcast with Mike really resounded with me on women in leadership within the church. I struggle a lot with the idea of what women living a Christ-led life looks like versus the women in leadership society usually sees. Usually sees. Sees is not a word.
Yep.
Unfortunately, there seems to be a huge gap between the two. And even more unfortunately, we still don't see that many women in leadership within the church or outside of the church are living openly as a Christian. Could you explain a little more on how you have lived in that gap? Have you found a comfortable place yet as a Christian leader who happens to be a woman?
What's the gap? I don't understand the gap.
She goes on to say, I cringe when I think what society usually sees as Christian women, married, children, submissive in their husband. Luckily, my mom has shown me a glimpse of what that could look like, but could you share more of your own story? Thank you in advance. So I think she's saying you either get this picture of women in the church that like stay at home, have no voice, have no hobbies, just kind of sit there.
Yep.
Or you see women in society that are like hardcore CEO, but like aren't necessarily Christian women. Like she's saying there's like a huge gap here. So as if we don't, so I think she's saying we don't have leadership in the church to look up to.
Got it.
So we're forced to look up to people in society, but they're not necessarily Christians. So what do you do?
Has she heard of Sarah Palin?
I don't know. I could write her back and
ask her. Just read Proverbs 31. That's all you need.
Oh my gosh. I'm just cringing.
Yeah, you talk about an abused passage in this conversation.
Yeah.
That's an abused passage, considering it's about wisdom and not about a woman at all.
Who gets up early.
Yeah, and serves her husband and works. It's just awesome. No, yeah, it's about wisdom. Just to be clear.
Just to be clear on it.
Wisdom is personified as the woman in the relationship. So that's why it's called wisdom literature. It's not dating literature. Just to be clear, but and I think you even see this in the Bible, like the Mary Martha passage we referred to last podcast, or the Proverbs 31 woman, or you kind of have these pieces of what it means to be a Christian woman juxtaposed with the cultural pieces. So Bonnie, how do you live in that gap?
I like to live in a framework, a more global framework. Whoa. I think our biggest problem is that we are viewing a very small framework of women in our churches right around us, and then women like at large in America. Right. So I think that's a problem. If we have a better global perspective and saying, okay, what is like the Christian woman in Haiti doing?
Right.
Or what is, the Christian mom over here in this other country doing, and like what problems does she faces? I think our biggest problem is that we really look through a lens of like this Western theological framework, and instead of going like these people in other parts of the country, what they're not worried about is they're not worried about calling. They're not worried about getting it right. They're not worried about making sure that they're doing X, Y, and Z. They're just worried about like literally living the life that God put out in front of them.
Right.
And so it really took me realizing my perspective was very limited and trying to expand that and then saying what's in front of me. And it honestly, as terrible as this sounds, but it's just true, is that it took so many years of being hurt and feeling like I didn't have a place at the table to just be like, screw it, I'm just going to pull up a chair anyway.
Right.
And for better or for worse, that's sort of what happened to me. And I just started writing. And I think it's fine to find women in society, if you don't have that, like a role model in the church that's in leadership, that are leaders. And I don't think it necessarily matters all the time if you know like their theological understandings of every single thing in the Bible. Mm-hmm. But to say like the overarching theme of Scripture is I believe in justice, I believe in Jesus, I believe in treating people well, I believe in, holding up the poor and oppressed, whatever it is, and just living that out and grabbing that where you find it and trying to emulate that.
Yeah.
So for me, I haven't, recently there's been more women, like I just went this past year to like my first ever women's conference, because generally it's not my thing. But I went to the IF gathering.
Yeah.
And there was a few women there that I was like, yes, like Jo Saxton.
Yeah.
She was awesome.
I know Jo.
She was there. Of course, Jen Hatmaker's there and she was good. And there were some other ones and I was like, yes, like this is, these women are really just championing causes that they think Scripture's doing.
Right. They're not, and that is what I hear you saying. Mm-hmm. It's less about being a Christian woman and more just being about a Christian.
Just about being a Jesus follower.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, who happens to be a woman.
Yeah. See, like that's what I'm talking about with the global perspective.
Okay,
it's like
so that's
nobody's
good.
sitting there going,
this is big.
As a Christian woman, what should I be doing today?
Right.
They're just like, as a follower of Jesus, this is how my life plays out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's the point, is that like I'm not interested in necessarily saying like my Christian womanhood is defined by these passages. I'm interested in saying like me as a follower of Jesus is defined by this.
Oh, I like it.
So
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I try to live in that gap as a white male. By I don't know, I got nothing.
There's no gap
I'm sitting
for
here
you.
in tension.
I know. I'm like,
I was like,
what's he gonna say?
Yeah, but I think that's the problem, is you have to first decide to yourself is like, am I going to play into this stereotype and try to live up to these things, or I'm just going to realize that across the board we're all Jesus followers.
That's it. That's it. It's like, I mean, because I do. It's kind of like race. You never want to say that, but there's a sense, and I think we made this point last podcast that you and I did. But when people say they don't see color, especially when white people say they don't see color. That's the wrong thing to say. God sees color. God loves color. Difference
God sees gender. Yeah.
Well, that's it. God does see gender.
Yeah. And
you are a Christian woman, and we can't pretend. And so our complementarian friends will accuse us of we're just trying to make men and women the same. And please, we're not. Mm-mm. There are complementary roles and complementary giftings and passions. And some stereotypes are true. Absolutely.
Right.
But to transcend the binary way of looking at this whole thing, I really like what you're saying here. That it's not, I'm not a Christian man, you're not a Christian woman, we're Jesus followers who happen to be.
Men
but we're not
women.
saying that's irrelevant. It's totally relevant.
Right.
But it's not the defining thing that
and
we're
it's not
walking
my
around
lens.
in. Correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good, Bonnie.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to spend some more time on this topic.
Yes.
Do you have any resources that you'd recommend?
I'm sure I do.
What was that noise?
I was clicking my mouth.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I'm sure I do.
It sounded like a hard drive that was processing information there.
Mm-hmm. Well, while she thinks about that, I mean, are there any other male voices that are kind of trying to bring this to light aside from applying it how we've applied it? But I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. But because
you're not the only one.
No, it's just if you go into the vineyard, the vineyard movement, there are voices that are egalitarian voices. If you go into some of the mainline denominational movements, obviously,
right.
You've got voices there. N.T. Wright has done a lot of work on, not a lot of work, He's written an article you can find online about women's equality in the church. A guy named Scott with one T, McKnight, wrote a book called The Blue Parakeet. It's about how you understand the Bible, but at the end, he gives an incredible breakdown of the very famous Timothy passage, which is, I do not permit a man or a woman, or I do not permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man. There's a book that was written in response to this Council for Manhood and Womanhood. It's called Discovering Biblical Equality, edited by Pierce and Gruthus, I think is how you say it. That's got some stuff in there. A guy named Gordon Fee, who's one of my favorite New Testament scholars, like literally one of the best New Testament scholars in the world, is an egalitarian. So you have, but these voices aren't social media.
Sure.
Platform voices.
Yeah.
These are like the deep academic. Now you have deep academic voices on the other side. I'm not implying that there aren't. These are very legitimate biblical arguments, and like we said, all of our complementarian friends will have responses to everything we've said. And so, there are very clear conversation trees down each side. Yeah. Well, if they say this, then this is the response, and then this is their response to my response to their response, and then my response to their response to their response to my response. And you could just dive, as deep as you want to go in this. But those are some of the voices for me that have been particularly powerful. These are some of a guy named Craig Keener. These are New Testament. I love these guys in New Testament studies regardless. Then I'm reading them going, oh my goodness, there's this whole train of thought here in these verses that's never, at least in the stuff I've read, has never been adequately dealt with. And then that spins me out then so I start reading the guys that they're reading.
Yep.
And the women that they're reading, and you realize, oh my goodness, there's actually a way to understand these verses that makes better sense of than the complementarian reading, and you go, oh, okay, all right, I've been wrong. I was wrong on this. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're just getting into the conversation, sorry, I think it was like the first book I read.
Andy, put out the cigar, man. Come on.
The one that's like, I can't remember it, but it's the 4 views on women in ministry.
Yes.
Yeah, and it kind of goes through it. That's like at least a good starting place and a good overview.
If you're new to like some of the theology stuff, there are these books in a series called Counterpoints.
Yeah, those are good.
These are really good. So it's like 3 views on hell, 4 views on women in ministry, 3 views on whether spiritual gifts are here today.
And it's like different writers of each chapter that are from that view, but then they answer each other's questions.
Right,
it's good.
They critique each other. So it's really interesting. That's excellent.
So I think that's a good resource. The other one I really enjoy, he was a professor of mine. He's since passed, but Ray Anderson. He's so good because he doesn't just give you a straight up answer. He really makes you think. Like we learned all this stuff, and then our first final, there was just one question, and it was like, you're in a hospital and you're the chaplain, and they want to know if they should take the grandma off life support. Give us your definition of the soul. And you're like, what? He was like, that's what ministry is. So get to it. So anything Ray Anderson, he does some good things on just on being human,
right?
And things like that. I would do Ray. And then in terms of women voices that I read now that are just doing their thing, I really like Rachel Held Evans. I like Glennon Doyle. She's a little more controversial, but I like her.
Oh yeah, Rachel's not.
Yeah, I guess they both are, but sure. Glennon's more so. And then I really like I like Jen Hatmaker. I like Joe Saxton. And then actually Brene Brown, she does psychology books, but for anyone who's a woman who's been kind of burned and figuring out how to step out in bravery, I think her books are really, really helpful and good. Yep. Like The Gifts of Imperfectionism is awesome. And Finding Greatly is also great. So
nice. All right. Well, brothers and sisters, this wraps up another episode 46. So in honor of Andy's age, we'll wrap this up. If you want to find out more about Bonnie, findtheblue.com, Find the Blue podcast on iTunes. I'm putting together a very thorough list of resources for this conversation.
Oh, great.
from the egalitarian side. So if you've read something out there in podcast land and you want to send me a recommendation, I'd love to know that. I'm going to put together a list that's kind of on the academic side, on the popular side, for people who want to find out more. And then please give us feedback as always. We'd love, if there are other questions that this has raised, we'd love to keep this conversation going. So thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And today we found the blue, and she was right here.
Did.
She was right
here all along.
All along. We had no idea.
Right here.
All right, Andy. Andy's getting some practice and doing our little blessing. And
we were shot down, though, on Facebook for taking it out of its context.
What? What are you talking about?
Well, that the blessing was for Moses to give to Aaron.
To give to the people.
Yeah, to give to the people.
Correct.
And just how it was.
Oh, it's like the Jeremiah thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. All right. All right. So see, we're even guilty of our own. That's funny.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's funny. All right. Well, then maybe you should make one up right now on the spot. Go.
All of you out there in listener land, drive safe.
Yes.
Run hard.
Yes.
Sweat well.
Okay. I'm 1 for 3.
Yeah.
Right now, I'll let you pick the one.
And may God use this to change your life.
Yes.
That was a good one.
Yes. All right. I remember.
So it's unbiblical blessing ever.
Yes. God helps those who help themselves.
That's right.
So go get it.
If you work hard enough,
go chase your dreams. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself, people. Believe in yourself.
Oh my God.
Believe in yourself.
This just derails.
Don't take this out of
fast.
context. This was a blessing from Mike to Andy. So you can't go and take it for yourself.
I said that.
God.
No, you're trying. I have to play defense all over. See, notice how in February it was just Bonnie and I in the room.
It's true.
Now
Andy's
Andy's here. And I just want that noted as the continual encroachment of Andy.
I just picked up on your guys' scheduling on the other two as you trying to work me out. And I just needed to take control.
I know. It's so true. All right, brothers and sisters, we're so thrilled to be a part of your life. Thank you for allowing us to step into your workout, to your drive, to your house. We are very honored to do so, and would love to hear what you think. As always,
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Vox, the Mike Erre podcast. Be sure to like Mike on Facebook at facebook.com/official Mike Erre. Follow Mike on Twitter and Periscope at Mike Erre for live interaction and ongoing Q&A. Don't forget to visit subversivekingdom.com for further engagement and information about Mike.